Okay, good morning everybody. Shall we start with another term rather than the one which was used by our respectable colleague when she said that it's an amazing opportunity to speak about self-criticism. I would eventually offer the term self-reflection, because I think that we are all here very much fit to make it that way. So the theme of this panel this morning, the challenges of regional cooperation and solidarity for NGOs, formal and non-formal groups and networks, should start with eventually reflection on the initial response in a situation of crisis, and then to what extent the NGOs and the volunteers and the activists actually respond to such an emergency, and especially to what extent and in what ways they turn to each other, they cooperate to each other, they implement the principle of solidarity on the field where it's the most difficult moments for it. And speaking about the self-reflection, I remind to myself discovering an outstanding person during my studying times in France. It's an author whose name is Jean-Christophe Ruffin. Actually, he is today a member of the French Academy. And even in 1986, he published a book called Humanitarian Trap. This book was republished in '93, and the essential challenge that he put in this book was to what extent the humanitarian answer, which is given by then very popular a term of various NGOs without frontiers. We have Doctors Without Frontiers and Everything Without Frontiers, etc., etc. To what extent it is politically motivated, to what extent the NGO activists may rely on their, if at all it's possible, to rely on their political neutrality, to what extent through providing humanitarian help in general sense of the term, they fuel the conflicts again, and many other controversial issues which arisen from his very experience from the field, because at that time, at the beginning, he was vice president of Doctors Without Borders, and then he was a president of an NGO that I'm sure that everybody of you know, Action Against Hunger, actually. And with a lot of experience from the field, he then has written another book in the same context, The Empire and the New Barbars, drawing a line between the north, the so-called developed world, and the south, where in that context and moment, I'm speaking some 25 years ago, was a space with continuous clashes, wars, refugee flows, etc. So in our today's context, the question of the regional cooperation somehow become crucial because of the fact that okay, it was a continental crisis, or not to say an intercontinental crisis, but still speaking about the Southeastern Europe, speaking about the responses which were provided by the various governments of the countries in the region, and the controversial, I would say, cooperation between the NGO sector, the civil society sector, the activists, and the correspondent governments would bring us again to this self-reflection that I mentioned at the beginning, simply because of the fact and eventually the risk that we are maybe now in a break between the two big refugee influxes. So I would give more the space to our distinguished panelists today. According to the program, I would like to give the floor and present Mr. Franjo Steiner. He is an outstanding activist coming here from Austria, and you will probably see the pattern of presenting the panelist, which goes, the pattern goes geographically from the north of our distinguished guests towards the south. And Mr. Steiner is an outstanding expert on integration, and he will give us a broader yet concrete picture about two, how should I say, not contradicting but complementing aspects of dealing with migrants. From one side, dealing with migrants who are in the process of integration in the country, and from the other side, refugees, asylum seekers, eventually asylum seekers whose claim was refused, actually, and people that were sent back.